First, Christopher, thank you very much for inviting me. And what I mean by paradox is that all that I can think about conducting appears to have contradictory implications. I've watched so many conductors, great and small, and the one thing which you can say more or less positively is that none of them look like anybody else. Now, if you see a violinist playing a violin, you can tell pretty well just by looking, even if you can't hear the sound, if they really can master their instrument. And therein lies the paradox. And to play an instrument, which is what all musicians try to do, is to control something which is inanimate. Whereas a conductor does not control anything that is inanimate. He is controlling human beings. He does not have to have a definite technique which is to do with material matters. Let's just take a tiny little illustration. I was brought up that the downbeat is always down like this, okay? But then I saw some Russian conductors and the downbeat, it goes up. That's where it counts. Okay, it works. It works. And that is the important thing to remember when we are working and teaching and discussing with other people. The real problem is not to interfere with the natural personality of whoever your student or your colleague is, but to give them help which will help them solve any problems they might have. One of the most important things I think we have to remember, first of all, two little things. Conducting is essentially a one-handed affair. Everybody seems to conduct with two hands. It drives me crazy. I call conducting like that. First of all, I call it a Grecian urn. And secondly, I describe it as shouting at the orchestra. Basically, everything you do with one hand is you give the tempo. You can do an enormous amount with one hand. Cristobal, let me give you the fundamental thing behind it. When you are conducting opera, this hand is for the orchestra and the tempo, etc. This hand is for the singers. So you have to be two-handed. Yeah. So when you are conducting an ordinary symphony orchestra, you don't need to do two hands. Now, let me just let me go back and say something else. We are talking about conductors and conducting orchestras, but first of all, we have to talk about what sort of orchestra. I mean, I'm not an expert in choral conducting, nor do I know much about conducting a town band. I'm conducted all my life the symphony orchestra, the opera orchestra and the radio orchestra. That's what I have my experience with. But it does, some of the things which I have learned certainly would not apply to other kinds of orchestras or other kinds of conducting, like choral conducting. A really good analogy, which we discovered the other day, is that imagine you're a touring pianist with a chamber music group, and you arrive at a concert hall to give a concert in the evening, and you have a half an hour sound test, and you have a beautiful piano, an absolute wonderful piano, and it just gives you everything you want. And then you pack your bags and you go, and the next town, the next night, you go in there and you have a piece of crap. You have to play it. You have to know how to work it. And orchestras, we as conductors are always meeting orchestras of different levels. You cannot conduct the greatest orchestras in the same technique and same way as you conduct a lesser good orchestra, as you conduct a school orchestra. So we have to adapt. So actually, that's a very important thing. We have to adapt. we cannot come with preconceived ideas. I'm going to do this in 4. I'm going to do this in 2. I'm going to subdivide. No, you're conducting and you suddenly find you must do this or you don't do this. You have to be prepared to change immediately. When you start your work with a new orchestra, you have to find out what they need. And some orchestras need one thing and some orchestras need another. For example, I've never conducted the Vienna Philharmonic, but my friends who have tell me that they play best when you give them a beat which is without a click. And but other orchestras, I've told some American orchestras, can only play if you give them everything. Some orchestras expect a conductor to be a teacher. Some orchestras don't, and you have to adjust. So, have you you understand that?